بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم نحمد ونصلي على رسول كريم السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. Alhamdulillah, we praise Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, ask him send peace and blessing his beloved and our beloved Sayyidina Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. This course, um, there's a few courses I've done for Wise before. It says that the course is under the Hanbali stream, but it's really it's a general course, universal, you could say, and it's applicable to, you know, doesn't matter what the madhab is. At the end of it, the last session, at the eighth one, inshallah, this is 8 weeks, so 45 minutes each, inshallah. And so, yeah, it is the last session may be humbly specific just to benefit that stream in Wise's courses, but ultimately overall it's for any madhab applicable, as is a general history of fiqh, development and so forth, and some of the themes that run through the development of fiqh. The course is based on the Ta'heel Fiqhi courses of Shaykh Amir Bahjat and his team from Medina Munawwara. There's a whole series of courses that are created and basically representing, refreshing fiqh for the layman, using PowerPoint and a few other things to make it more accessible and to teach all the science. So you can say it's like the first 2 years of the Alim course, if you can put it that way. The content of that presented in a meaningful way, easy digestible way. I think it's by probably, to see in their group, it's probably about 50,000 people have gone through that course. So this is one component of that course. It is an introduction course, introduction to the science of fiqh. So this is like a pre-subject to fiqh. So in a way, it's like an introduction. So it doesn't need an introduction. That's, I think, as far as I'm going to go with the introduction, inshallah. So let's get to the actual material, inshallah. Firstly, what we can get out of this course, what we can achieve out of this course: understand the meaning of fiqh, its virtues and rulings of studying it. Motivate the learner in the study of fiqh. Comprehend the historical stages of development of fiqh, and develop veneration, respect for the imams of fiqh, recognize their status and virtues, and appreciate and honor their efforts. This is important for the student. If you don't do this, if you don't develop respect and appreciation for the science that you're going to study, then you lose what's Shaykh Amir calls qana'a. You don't have confidence in the science. And if you don't have confidence in the science, you will actually not get very far with it. And he gives, so this is to motivate the students. It is to motivate us in further learning. It is to have an appreciation for the imams and to develop a confidence in the efforts. Just bear with me a moment, just checking, make sure that the slides are all displayed for you. And if a student doesn't have, let's say in a specific school, let's say you're studying a Hanafi school or the Hanbali school of fiqh, jurisprudence, this is an introduction to those detailed study of fiqh, the actual subject of fiqh, or usul of fiqh, the principles for those schools. If a student doesn't have confidence, then what they will say is statements, and you hear these statements here and there, that these are men, these imams that were men, and I'm a man, and I'll throw their statements are not worth anything. And it's in an imaginary situation that the student put himself in. There's an assumption made that the imams of fiqh, that they develop views that were contrary to the Quran Sunnah, or they were of their own invention without having a reference in the Quran Sunnah. And for a seeker of knowledge entering, because in Arabic this subject is called, I called it the journey of fiqh. Madkhal, entry point, literally means an entry point, an access point of fiqh. That's what the course called, the Madkhal ila fiqh. It doesn't translate very well into English, so therefore I didn't translate. I just called it the journey of fiqh. but this is like an introduction into the science of fiqh, so that you're accessing it through an entrance, right? And so the reason why this is being done is so that students don't make the mistake of going into this very precious science, that probably the most work that our ulama have done of the ummah of Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, the people who are the heirs of Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. If you look at all the sciences of knowledge in hadith, fiqh, tafsir, and so forth, and the most energy is expended in fiqh, because it's a requirement of on a daily basis for courts, for daily worship. It's constantly being affected by daily situation, circumstances that might exist. A new transaction appears, then it has to be, dealt with. A student who becomes this science in an inappropriate way, or without confidence in it, or doubts it, and makes wrong assumptions, all of a sudden has dug a hole for themselves, and they will turn off from this science very quickly. Like, for example, if you're learning, say, a certain language, and in that language, the school that teaches, the book that teaches language, or the course that you're studying for that specific language, this is not a proper method to teach. You start questioning the teacher, textbook, and so forth. But you're learning the language. You don't know the language, right? You don't know the language. But you're already now questioning. So you'll never actually get the language through that, because you've already created a doubt in yourself, because the approach is not correct, and you start setting up your own yardsticks of measurement. I'm learning this course in language, but they're teaching me like colors or days of the week. How I'm going to speak conversation in this language, when you start creating your own yardsticks or standards by which you measure the success of that course or not. You've already internally you've switched off from that course. So the first step is that you should have confidence in the science, and that you enter from the proper entrance, and understand that the fiqh schools that we have, they are an extension of the madrasa of Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. And it's not possible that any alim who fears Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, from the imams and the Muslims, that he said something that, and if he fears Allah, that he intentionally said something of his own opinion, that contradicts the Quran and Sunnah. It is possible that from the imams of the Muslims, the authorities, the ulama, they might get something right, might get something wrong. But the idea that one of them just speaks his mind or the top of his head, and without any guardrails, without anything, this is impossible. This is like an impossibility. He can make a mistake. So you'll never, if you go into the science without the confidence and trust, then you'll never perfect. You'll have to subject yourself, and this is in every field, secular fields. You'll have to subject your professor, your teacher, the master of the field, a carpenter. It doesn't matter who it is. You're doing an apprenticeship. You'll have to subject to the expertise of that person. And if you don't do that, you're already at every second, every minute you're questioning and doubting them. You'll never benefit from the master and their skill. Furthermore, it's acknowledge the valid differences between various schools of fiqh. This is a natural thing that exists within Islamic sciences and all sciences. Understand the meanings of following a madhab or school of fiqh, the rulings of that following, and to differentiate between that which is permissible and impermissible in regards to that. So, like the ruling of following one school, and is it permissible or impermissible? We'll get to that, inshallah ta'ala. These things will be discussed, because that's the structure that holds our fiqh, is in the four madahib, in the four schools of Hanafi, Maliki, Shafi, and Hanbali. These are the four schools that they carry Islamic jurisprudence, transferred it intact till our time. And we're going to go through the schools, like those schools that become defunct, schools that have continued the four, and other schools, and other attempts to create new schools in the recent era. All right. So the topics that will be covered in this course will be the definition of fiqh, the historical stages and development of fiqh, the foundational stages, major milestones, the fiqh in the era. So foundation stage is referring to the era of Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. Fiqh in the era of Sahaba radiallahu anhum, the greatest fuqaha jurists. Fiqh in the era of Tabi'een, the second generation, so Sahaba, the first generation, and then the second generation. Detailed overview of each of the four madhabs, extinct madhabs, recent major historical developments in fiqh, sticking to one's madhab and views regarding that, and fiqh schools. So, for example, historical schools that existed, for example, at the Ahlul Hadith. I'm not talking about contemporary schools that call themselves Ahlul Hadith, talking about the classic, the ulama of Hadith, or the fuqaha of Hadith, the jurists of Hadith, or the traditionists, Ahlul Rai, or the rationalists, the Zahiriya, or the literalists, and now we recently have the modernists. The reasons for the difference of the ulama, like how is it possible if there are sources of Quran and the Sunnah, which is one, then why is there a difference of opinion? All right. So let's start with the definition of fiqh, inshallah. So there is the word fiqh itself, there has a linguistic meaning. And linguistically, fiqh, the word fiqh means faham or understanding. So that's a general word that means like I have fiqh, meaning I have understanding. That is the way the word is used in Arabic, or was used more so in the past. Now it's become more connected to the science of fiqh, but the word fiqh linguistically means just all it means is understanding. Then there's a secondary meaning in Sharia. The Sharia definition, the Shari'i definition, which is more a general Islamic understanding. So which is more, so if you can imagine like a circle or a set, we probably did this at school. So you have a circle and then you have a smaller circle within it, a subset, right? So you have the bigger set, which is understanding, which could mean anything, understanding mathematics and French and whatever else, every top understanding will be included in that. Then you have a subset within it, which is Islamic understanding. So it's not necessarily it's not Islamic law. It's a general understanding of deen and Islam. So it could be a hadith, on aqidah, topic of aqidah, which is not fiqh. Aqidah, that also comes under fiqh in the Sharia sense, or this general Islamic sense. Or it could be something like, let's say, the chapter about Jannah, or there's a discussion happening in the mosque. Let's say there's two discussions happening, two classes happening in the mosque. One is about Jannah, one is happening on wudu, right? The wudu one is definitely a fiqh, as in the way we generally understand, a technical term definition. While the Jannah one, that is also fiqh when it comes from the Sharia perspective. That this definition includes both of those. If there was another class happening of French, let's say French class, nothing to do with Islamic studies or Islamic sciences, so that will not come under this second definition of a general Sharia term. Then there's a third definition, science specific. This is called istilah in Arabic. The knowledge of the rulings of subsidiary Sharia issues, rulings of actions. So this is the fiqh that we generally know, the science of fiqh, jurisprudence, which relates to the actions of the slaves of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It doesn't relate to aqidah beliefs. It doesn't relate to other sciences. It relates to specifically what is the ruling of this action the person, is this haram or not? Is this permissible or not? Is this mustahab, rewarded or not? Is this halal or not? These are all to do with actions, right? What grade is this? Makruh, dislike. It's not haram, but it's dislike. So applying this to the actions of the slaves of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So you could say that the linguistic meaning is the most widest circle. Within that, there is a subset, which is the Sharia, and within that is fiqh, science specific. Okay. So you have these three sort of thing, and the most restricted, of course, in the word for fiqh, and all this is fiqh used linguistically, fiqh used in Sharia and general Islamic. So when you read the hadith, man yuridullah khayran yufaqqih fi din, whoever has tafaqquh of deen, whoever Allah intends good to, gives him understanding of deen. This is not, which one is this referring to? Anybody? If you can offer your opinion. Whoever Allah intends good to, gives him understanding of deen. He gives him fiqh of deen. Anybody want to give it a try? Which one would?
So I think what this could mean is
If you could type, it would be better.
okay. Okay.
Is the first one, second, or third one? Somebody answered. Second one. So Ali said the second one. Someone said is Muhammad Aman said the first one. It is the first one and the second one, but not the third one. Right? So if we are, let's say we're having a discussion about Jannah, the dars is happening about Jannah. That dars is now, it includes, it fits the first definition for sure, because it's understanding, right? So it'll apply, the first one will apply in all cases. Anything that you understand will apply, the first one will be applicable. Then we want to distinguish between the second one and third one. If we're doing a dars on wudu, then that is fiqh. So that will be applicable to the second one and third one, right? So the third one is inclusive of the third one is inclusive of the second one. The specific science of fiqh definition, fiqh used in that sense, is still applicable. It's still part of that. But the hadith, whoever Allah intends good to, right? Whoever Allah intends good to, gives him understanding. It applies to the second one. It's much more vast. It's not talking about technical knowledge only. It's not talking about fiqh or usul of fiqh. It's talking about all Islamic science, knowledge, understanding, right? So it's called a shari'i definition, or a general sharia or general Islamic definition, right? Um, and and like, which one is more needed? Despite, as I mentioned earlier, that the efforts made on fiqh is so much, but for some people, the most important thing will be to learn aqidah, which is also comes under general sharia definition, because you have to know your basic iman, which is more important, right? And there's an ayat of Quran, Shaykh Amir quotes, "Aman huwa qanatan ana al-layli," that it is one who is devoutly obedient during periods of the night, prostrating and standing in prayer, fearing and hereafter and hoping for the mercy of his Lord. Say, are those who know equal to those who don't know? Now, if you look at this verse, it's talking about sajda, the person is praying and he's fearing Allah. And so this is not fiqh, this is not a subject fiqh. Fear of Allah and mercy, hoping in the mercy of Allah, is not generally what we understand fiqh to be. But this comes under the second definition, right? So this comes and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, can those who know, are those who know equal to those who don't know? This is not talking about in the last sense. He's talking about in the second sense, the general sharia, to know the matters of deen. Can the ones who know the matters of deen, and it's qualified, if you read the previous part of the ayat, those who fear Allah, right? And those who are hoping for the mercy of Allah. So that's not a fiqh subject. That's not a Islamic jurisprudence subject, right? But it is an Islamic subject. It's to do with deen, right? The subject matter of fiqh. So let's move to the next point. These definitions, or this is generally the structure of all Islamic books, is like this. So that when we go into a science, we understand the scope of have a proper, clear image of what this topic is and what it's not. By excluding all the topics that it's not, then you have a clear focus on what the subject is. The subject matter, the mawdu', is the actions of Allah's slaves in relation to Islamic legal rulings. Very simple. I mentioned this earlier as well. So, for example, the mawdu', the subject matter of medicine, is what? Anybody? What's the subject matter of medicine? Anybody? What's the scope of medicine? The scope of medicine is the human body. Yes, human biology. Jazakallah. Human body. Right. That's the limitation of the subject matter or the scope of medicine. So it's not so fiqh. Its scope is the actions of the slaves of Allah. Right. What are its rewards? The rewards, all virtues related to Islamic knowledge they hear about, they are for the study of fiqh as well. And then is this virtue specific to fiqh, Imam Ibn Jawzi rahimahullah says, he says the greatest proof of the greatest of a thing is look at its outcomes, its fruits, right? Fiqh is the most virtuous of knowledge in his view, because you're studying and answering that thing which pleases Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, meaning the ibadah and the actions of the slaves of Allah. And if you're studying and teaching it, then you're helping the slaves of Allah understand how to please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala more. 99% of, or pretty much most of the questions that any alim will get in his life is to do with fiqh. Like 99%. That's why it's like it's considered the most virtuous of knowledge because of what it entails. And majority of the ulama's works, imams as well. This is my father rahimahullah, he used to say that every imam is actually a mufti. Practically, if you look at it, we might not be qualified. We hope they're qualified, but they are a mufti because they're constantly answering questions related to what they should and shouldn't do. Right? Its foundations is on usul of fiqh, or the principle of fiqh. So there's a whole other science, but basically it comes through a process of a framework of structured. It's not just haphazard. Just grab the ayat of Quran, hadith, and just say when I apply it like this. No, those ayat and hadith are processed through a very systematic way, as the fuqaha have expounded for us. All right, that which is fard ain and or individual obligation. So that which is fard kifaya or a communal obligation. Sorry. So in fiqh, what you need for your daily life is fard ain. Right? What you need for your soul, for that which needs to be done, the knowledge of that is, the fiqh of that is fard ain. That which is a fard kifaya or communal, meaning that some people need to do it. As a science itself, you need to have some people that are fuqaha, jurists. People have not everyone has to become jurist of everything, but you need some people to make sure that they know they have these sciences before them. Okay, so like not everyone has to know, for example, the zakat of shares, right? But if you have shares, then it's fard ain on you. It's compulsory. It's individually an obligation on you to make sure you know that. But you need to have somebody in the community who knows the ahkam of that thing, because people are involved in it, right? Wudu, for example, everybody has to know the rulings of wudu. That's fard ain. So there's no excuse like that. Everybody has to learn that. So this is something. These are the two sort of breakdowns of the ahkam, and then the ruling of that which you need, of course, is what you need is is fard ain on you. There are many this science, like there are many people that have written and presented this differently. So there's from Madkhal Fiqh Islam, Tariq Fiqh Islam. I studied with Shaykh Mustaqim Shah from England, studied a book with him on this. Madkhal Tashri' Islam, Tariq Tashri'. So there's so many like different ways, the history of the Sharia, development Sharia, the history of Sharia, the history entry to history, the history of Fiqh Islami. So there's different top names are given to this subject. Um, but they in reality they're all in one orbit. And they also differ in their division. Some say, they'll say like the era of Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, the era of Sahaba, the era of Tabi'een, the era of the Abbasiyun, the Abbasi Khilafat, Banu Umayyah, and so forth. And some others put it into the age of childhood, then youth, then middle age, then old age, like in terms of how it matured, right? The science. Some, have defined a stage of stagnation and simply copying and not much fiqh, meaning like there's no independent juristic reasoning. So anyway, we'll get to that inshallah ta'ala and what that means, and so having those sort of opinions. So let's have a look at this. This is so the first stage is the establishment of Islamic law. This is until the year 11 after Hijrah, meaning on the passing away of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. This can only happen with wahi, and this can only happen with Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam being the last prophet. When wahi ended, the establishment, what's called Sharia. The Sharia is established in the lifetime of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam with the Prophet of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? Whatever is after this is called fiqh. But while he is, the process of the Sharia being established cannot be established except in his lifetime, right? Like, for example, Salat is fard, that can only be established in the lifetime of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, as it was. And Ramadan is fard, as an example, or the riba is haram, right? These haram and halal, and there's big ones like the foundational of Sharia. The Sharia can only be made in the lifetime of our Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and when he, especially because our Sharia is specific, revealed to him, it cannot be established afterwards, not by Sahabi or Tabi'i or anybody else afterwards, right? Or Tabi'i. So that's a first stage. It's a stage of revelation. It's a stage of the laws being established. The stage before the madhabs, the schools that we know today, the fiqh schools, there is an era in between the time of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and this. It doesn't mean that there was no schools. We'll get to that in a moment, and we're going to explain each of these areas in detail, inshallah. And this lasted approximately until the 100 after Hijrah. Then the era of the madhab started, and that continued until 13. Now, he says in the slides until 13, which is about 140 years ago. In reality, that has still continued. Those schools are still surviving and thriving now. But the 1300, about 150 years ago, we're talking about the peak of the colonial era of a lot of the Muslim world. Drastic changes from the printing press, from the plethora of new masail that has come, the cross-pollination between schools. All of these things are sort of a feature of the recent era. A lot of upheaval happened in the world, and a lot of upheaval happened in fiqh as well. And then you got the modern era since then, which I just mentioned, right? So however, these dates are approximations, and these divisions are the opinion of some scholars, not the opinion of every scholar or all scholars, right? So although it's there just for our understanding, it's a very simple presentation of the stages that occurred in fiqh. And then each school, even if you're not a Hanbali, when I do the 8th session, inshallah, it'd be good if you attend that, inshallah, because in that one you will actually see one school, how it, although we're going to go through all four, but I'll go into more detail in the Hanbali school in the 8th session. But it shows you how the development occurred within the schools as well over time. But again, and then they sort of demark the dates of each stage within the school on the death of so and so. Like this Imam died, and that was sort of the end of this generation or era, and hence like a new era started. But again, eras are very hard to define exactly, right? So this is something that we have to be mindful of, that these are not, people have more breakdowns than this, or they have different dates for each stage as well. Obviously, the death of Rasulullah is fixed, right? But these are approximations and a breakdown of some ulama. All right. So the era of the established Sharia, this is the era of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So the historical, there are two divisions. So if you look at the top, you got the Meccan era. The Meccan era's focus was first on usul al-din, the fundamental beliefs, the foundations of deen. This is the main focus in Makkah Mukarramah before Hijrah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. To say that there were no laws in Makkah is not true. This is incorrect. Of course, as soon as a prophet come, a Sharia is brought. However, since the people were in such jahalat about the basic fundamental beliefs and they had incorrect beliefs, the focus was there, but doesn't mean that fiqh was not there. Laws of fiqh was not there. For example, salat was in Makkah Mukarramah, right? And there was a salat before the 5 times salat that they used to perform. They used to pray. Other ahkam were there of akhlaq, taking care of the neighbors. We know that Ja'far bin Abi Talib, the Prophet's cousin, when he was in Abyssinia, in his speech explained about some of the moral laws that they were taught by Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So to say that this era is free from, there's no fiqh at all, yes, there was a focus on the fundamental beliefs, and the rule in relatively compared to Medina Munawwara, the rules were minimal. In the Medina era, sustained attention to the usul al-din continued, meaning the fundamental beliefs, strength, iman, proper sound beliefs, will continue, but more detailed in establish special laws and rulings. And these laws were the result of what? They came out as a result of answering questions, or something, an incident happened, external cause, and that triggered an answer or a reaction from Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, and on his, how he dealt with that or how he answered that. Either he answered a question or how he explained the situation, what to do. Or there was not a situation, external situation, nor was there a question posed, but an order, he ordered it without either of these two, right? The sources, of course, are very simply the Quran and the Sunnah, because Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam is alive. So it's either the Quran is being revealed with the laws, or Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam himself is speaking, or he's doing, or he's approving something's done in front of him. Specifics of this era, establishment of Sharia is exclusive to this stage, as I mentioned before. There's minimal difference opinion, because if there was any difference, right, then they would just go to Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam and he would resolve it. And there's a it is part of the prophetic mission, is the establishment of a law, Sharia. So one of the ayat al-Quran mention وَمَا قَدْرُ اللَّهَ حَقَّ قَدْرِهِ إِذْ قَالُوا مَا أَنزَلَ اللَّهُ إِلَّا بَشَرٍ مِّنَ الْبَشَرِ. So and they have not shown Allah his proper reverence when they said Allah has revealed nothing to any human being. So their rejection was the laws, right? So but it's, strangely enough, you look at here, just one thing, it says Quran and Sunnah. So where is ijma, consensus, an analogy, qiyas, right? How is it possible that there is another source of Sharia like ijma? Ultimately, the source of Sharia, the Quran and Sunnah. Ijma means the consensus of the scholars in the given generation. How is it possible that scholars can agree on something after, and that becomes part of Islam? What Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam said, my ummah will not come to an agreement on misguidance. There's a riwayah for that. There's an ayat of the Quran that backs this as well. However, whatever that came after Rasulullah passed away cannot be considered the development of the Sharia. That is a development of fiqh. But the people, the scholars, or those who do analogy, they are doing this based on the Quran and Sunnah, after having a deep understanding of the Quran and Sunnah, right? And whoever defies, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that in Surah Nisa, and whoever defies the messenger after guidance has become clear to them and follows a path other than that of the believers. Interesting that two things are mentioned here, right? So the consensus of the scholars of this ummah, the mujtahids of the ummah, coming to an agreement is built into our deen. And that is, the ulama said, one of the proofs for that is that those who follow the path of other than that of the believers, we will let them pursue what they have chosen, then they burn them in hell. What an evil end. So difference of opinion was minimal, but it did exist. For example, Sahaba radiallahu anhu were told to go pray Banu Qurayda when in one of the battles. So don't pray Asr until you're at Banu Qurayda. One group understood it as to go quickly, but they wanted to pray on time. Another took it literally and said that no, we will go. This is Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, told us to pray this. So ikhtilaf occurred. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam didn't censure any group, right? So these principles of even the late analogy, ijma, and so forth, these are built into the Quran and Sunnah already. Remember that the development of the laws, so there was a gradual establishment of the laws, in the establishment of many Sharia laws, in the development and establishment of a single law. So within one law, so for example, Salat, initially, alcohol was, you were not allowed to come to Salat. So that's within one law, there was gradual. Or in this development and establishment of a single law, like either in many laws, like overall, all the laws were done gradually, or in a single law, it was gradual, right? However, you cannot say that we can use the gradual to say, well, in Makkah, you're allowed to drink, so now I'll tell the Muslims that new practicing Muslims, you can drink. We can't tell that to people. But maybe in helping somebody leave drinking, which is haram, and that's established till Qiyamah, no one can make it halal for somebody, maybe to ease them in and to do their tarbiyah, You can use a great gradual hikmah, and when someone becomes a Muslim, they're married to non-Muslim. Let's say a lady becomes Muslim and husband is non-Muslim. Sheikh Ahmed gave the example. Someone is not circumcised. The day they become Muslim, you start telling them. Obviously, this is not appropriate, and you have to let the person, learn the Deen and get the basic, get Iman first, and then learn the basics, and use hikmah with them and wisdom with them. But this is not. We're not following the process of the early Muslims in the gradual way that they came into Islam, because we are trying to do a Sharia, like in our own association, organization, or masjid. We are basically look at the circumstance of the person because we don't want to lose the person. We want them to come onto Deen, but we might used to use the gradual process until they understand that they have to do these things as well, right? So that's a very different thing. That's more of a tarbiyah thing, training thing. Rasul in this era, Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam trained Sahaba for ijtihad, for independent, qualified reasoning, meaning that they were trained as scholars, as muftis, as mujtahids, right? Among the Sahaba radiallahu anhu, there was 14 Sahaba that were specifically known to be as mujtahids and great scholars. Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu, Umar radiallahu anhu, Osman radiallahu anhu, Ali radiallahu anhu, four Khalifas, Abdurrahman bin Auf, Muaz bin Jabal, Ammar bin Yasir, Hudayfa radiallahu anhu, Zayd bin Thabit, Abu Darda, Abu Musa Ashari, Ubay bin Ka'b, Ubad bin Samit, Ibn Masud radiallahu anhu. And these people, these 14, they used to give fatwas in the time of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, right? And if you look at some narrations among the Sahaba, they said, I asked the people of knowledge, meaning among the Sahaba, there were certain people established as ulama and fuqaha. So they were specialized already. Or the fuqaha of the Ansar gave this answer, the fuqaha of the people of Medina, right? Among the Sahaba, the fuqaha of the Ansar, meaning the jurist among the Sahaba of the Ansar of Medina, right? Are all the Sahaba radiallahu anhu fuqaha, or some were not? There's a discussion in books, right? In reality, that said that all of them, because of they spoke the perfect Arabic of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, meaning of that time and era in the Quran, and they understood directly in their own language, and they saw the revelation being revealed in Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. That they all had the ability within them, except that some expressed it with strength, like they were expressive in this ability, like they let it manifest, but in reality, they all had this ability of being able to understand things at a deep level because they saw it before them. So then the next stage comes, which is the era before the madhab of the schools of fiqh. So this first is part of this, the era of the Sahaba radiallahu anhum, and then the era of the tabi'een, right? Interesting, Imam Hanif is considered a tabi'i, right? As the ulama have noted, but he's such a junior tabi'i because he's so late in the era of the tabi'een, like he's right at the end, he just got it, that he's not, like for our purposes here, the madhab is still considered something afterwards, right? So although he's very early on, Imam Malik is quite early on as well. However, this era of tabi'een is considered like this, where senior Sahaba radiallahu anhum were more so active, and their scholars, there was greatest scholars of the tabi'een. Sources of the fiqh of this era, the primary sources, obviously, and some books that I mentioned, for example, Musannaf Abdul Razak, Musannaf ibn Abi Shayba. So these books contain, and Al-Awsat ibn Mundhir, these texts contain the fatwa of Sahaba, and you can put them into big books. Sahaba's fatwa, like Aisha radiallahu anha, we'll go through that in a moment. Sahaba radiallahu anhu's fatwa, narrations, and the tabi'eens and so forth, who the Sahaba trained, they are collected. There are sources. Imam Ahmad rahmallah was like an imam of this. He was an imam of the fatwa of Sahaba radiallahu anhu, as an example. So they didn't just narrate hadith, they memorized the Sahaba's fatwa as rulings and tabi'een's rulings as well. Secondary sources like fiqh, comparative fiqh books, like the Mughni of Ibn Qudama, much later books. There's other works as well of comparative fiqh that were compiled, like Majmu' and so forth, which contain these narrations. They're not as reliable as the other three mentioned above. The Awsat of Mundhir contains both very reliable narrations, very strong chains of narration, like chains of narration of hadith, very strong, and some weak ones as well. Ibn Hazm, Ibn Qayyim mentioned that there was 130 Sahaba radiallahu anhum who were issuing fatwas. right? In the whole era. So remember, the Sahaba radiallahu anhu lived till, you know, 80 years after. The young Sahaba, they lived for 80, 90 years after Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So the era of Sahaba radiallahu anhu is also in the time of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. There were 14 mentioned before, but there's others who, like Ibn Abbas radiallahu anhu, others became great scholars after Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Right? They started at the time of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, but they later matured and so forth. They were imams in their own right, and so that there's 130 of the companions of Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam are considered. They were issued. They're known, and their fatwas are recorded. So how are the Sahaba radiallahu anhu, so who are the main? So the prolific, the ones, a volume of fatwa can be compiled for each one. There were 7: Umar radiallahu anhu, Ali radiallahu anhu, Ibn Masud radiallahu anhu, Aisha radiallahu anha, Zayd bin Thabit radiallahu anhu, Ibn Abbas and Ibn Umar radiallahu anhu. So these were known to be prolific. The proof of that is how much was written and recorded. A chapter can be compiled of their fatwas. There were 13. These are intermediate. Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu. Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu is considered a greater faqih than Umar radiallahu anhu even. But his khilafah was only 2 years and 3 months. Because of that, he wasn't able to, like his faqaha didn't manifest because of the short life that he had after Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Umar radiallahu anhu is more so because he lived for, his khilafah was for 10 years. And Ali radiallahu anhu's scholarship you can see because he lived nearly 30 years after Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Um, um, and among the Sahaba radiallahu anhu, I'll just finish the, so among the intermediate levels, Abu Bakr, Osman, Sa'ad, Salama, Anas, Abu Sa'id, Abu Hurairah, Abdullah bin Amr, Ibn Zubayr, Abu Musa, Jabir, Muaz, Salman. A small chapter can be compiled of all their fatwas combined. Among them was Abu Darda, Hassan, Hussein, Prophet's grandsons, Ubay bin Ka'b, Abu Ayyub al-Ansari, Asma bint Abu Bakr, Zayd bin Arqam, Thawban, Burayda, radiallahu anhum ajma'in. Right? So among these Sahaba radiallahu anhum, there were 3 Sahaba that many ulama have pointed out that they actually have, Ibn Madini rahmullah mentioned this, that they had a school who trained ulama in a specific methodology, like their schools, a madhab or a methodology in school that was followed by their students. That were Ibn Mas'ud radiallahu anhu, Ibn Abbas radiallahu anhu, and Zayd bin Thabit radiallahu anhu. Right? Ibn Mas'ud radiallahu anhu, of course, was in Kufa, in Iraq. Ibn Abbas radiallahu anhu was in Mecca and Ta'if, and Zayd bin Thabit radiallahu anhu was in Medina Munawwara. But they actually trained students on their methodology, on their way. Right? I think that's it for today, inshallah. That time is, I think that was what we had for today. Any questions up to here, inshallah? I think this is for next week, inshallah. I just mentioned that point. Yes, inshallah. We'll get to the tabi'in stage next week, inshallah. Any questions? So this 45-minute session, I think we started 2 minutes late, but 2 minutes, inshallah. I know it's for some of you are in Australia and you're probably not here. Any questions? It's in front. It's on the slide there. Wayakum. So, brother asked about the location of these schools. So they're in front. Remember, these schools, of course, they didn't survive as an intact school. The Sahaba that are there, they are mujtahid mutlaqs. They're like obviously they'll be greater than the 4 imams because they were Sahaba radiallahu anhum, right? But they were great mujtahids of the Sahaba radiallahu anhum. But an intact school did not survive. But the views of all these schools survived within the 4 schools, right? Any questions? Any other questions? No? Inshallah, we'll call it a night. Jazakumullah khairah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us understanding. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make us learn this knowledge beneficial, and inshallah, and increase us in practice and taqwa and fear of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and appreciate Him, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, all the names that we mentioned of all these Imams, Sahaba radiallahu anhum. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala fill their graves with nur and reward them the best of rewards on behalf of the Ummah of Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam for the debt that we owe them. Jazakumullah khaira. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.